It was a quiet Tuesday night, well past 11:47 p.m., when my phone buzzed on my sleek, mahogany desk in my downtown office. I was buried in quarterly reports, the glow of my computer screen casting soft shadows across the room. The notification caught my eye, and I froze when I saw the name on the screen. Dad. The message was blunt, almost cold. "We're selling the house tomorrow. Your stuff will be on the curb. Don't bother coming by." I stared at those words, each one hitting like a punch to the gut. My childhood home, the place where I'd grown up, laughed, cried, and dreamed, was being ripped away without so much as a conversation. After a long pause, I typed a single word in response, "Okay." What my father didn't know, what none of my family knew, was that I'd purchased our childhood home 3 years earlier through my company, Sterling Properties LLC. They'd been drowning in financial trouble after my dad's business, Morrison Construction, defaulted on several major contracts, leaving them on the brink of ruin. The bank had been ready to foreclose, and I'd stepped in quietly, buying the mortgage to save the house. For 3 years, I let them live there rent-free, believing they still owned it. Every mortgage payment they made went straight into a trust fund I'd set up for their retirement, a secret I'd kept to protect their pride. As I set my phone down, another text came through, sharp and cutting. "And don't expect any family support anymore. You've been nothing but a disappointment. Time to face the real world." The words stung, but I pushed them aside and returned to my reports. Tomorrow was going to be a day they'd never forget. The next morning at 8:15 a.m., my phone rang, pulling me away from a steaming cup of coffee and a pile of project proposals. The caller ID read Richard Morrison, my realtor and a distant cousin who'd been managing the family's housing situation on my behalf, all without them knowing I was involved. "Good morning, Richard," I said, leaning back in my chair. His voice was cautious but urgent. "Miss Sterling, I have an unusual situation. There's a gentleman here claiming he owns the property at 1247 Maple Street and wants to list it for sale immediately." I smiled faintly. "That would be Robert Morrison, my father. Put him on speaker, please." There was a brief shuffle, and then my dad's voice boomed through the phone, loud and laced with frustration. "Look, I don't know who this Sterling person is, but I own this house, free and clear. My family has lived here for 15 years. I want it listed today for $850,000. Richard, ever the professional, responded with measured calm. "Sir, I'm afraid there's been some confusion. According to county records, this property is owned by Sterling Properties LLC. You'd need the owner's permission to list it." The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost feel my father's world crumbling as Richard continued. "The deed you have shows the original purchase from 2009. However, the property was sold to Sterling Properties in 2021 when Morrison Construction defaulted on the mortgage." I spoke up, my voice steady but kind. "Richard, please give Mr. Morrison my contact information. Tell him the property owner would like to discuss the situation." "Of course, Miss Sterling," Richard replied. 20 minutes later, my office phone rang, the shrill sound cutting through the morning stillness. I answered, and my dad's voice exploded through the speaker. "What the hell is going on? Who is Sterling Properties? How did they get my house?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what was to come. "Hello, Dad." The silence stretched for at least 10 seconds, heavy with disbelief. "Alexandra, what? How do you know about this?" "Because Sterling Properties is my company," I said calmly. "I bought the house 3 years ago when you defaulted on the mortgage." Another long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "You own our house?" "I do," I replied. "And for the past 3 years, every payment you thought you were making to the bank was actually going into a retirement fund I set up for you and Mom." "This isn't possible," he stammered. "You don't have that kind of money. You work at some little tech company. You drive that old Toyota." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "I drive a 2018 Toyota Camry because it's reliable and doesn't draw attention. And yes, I work in tech. I'm the CEO of Sterling Tech Solutions." I could hear his heavy breathing on the other end. "Dad, are you sitting down? Because there's more we need to discuss." "More?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sterling Properties doesn't just own your house, I continued. We own the entire Maple Street neighborhood, 47 houses total, all purchased over the past 4 years as investment properties. That's impossible, he said, his voice cracking. Would you like to see the portfolio? I can email you the documentation. Alexandra, I don't understand, he said, his tone a mix of shock and confusion. How could you afford this? When did you? In the background, I heard my mom's voice, faint but urgent. What's happening, Robert? Dad, put me on speaker so Mom can hear this too, I said. A moment later, her shaky voice came through. Alexandra, honey, what's going on? Hi, Mom, I said gently. Dad and I are discussing the house situation. There are some things you both need to know about my career that I haven't been able to share with you. Over the next hour, I walked them through the empire I'd built from nothing. Sterling Tech Solutions, which started as a small consulting firm in a cramped office, had grown into a $180 million software development company, specializing in predictive analytics for logistics and supply chain management. Sterling Properties, my real estate investment arm, now owned over 300 properties across 3 states, generating millions in revenue. Sterling Foundation, my charitable arm, had donated $15 million to causes like children's hospitals, scholarship programs, and community centers over the past 2 years. But your apartment, my mom said weakly, it's so small. It's the penthouse of a building I own downtown, I explained. I prefer smaller spaces. They're practical and comfortable. And your car, she added, it's just a Toyota. It's paid for, reliable, and doesn't scream for attention, I said. I don't need a luxury car to validate my success. My dad finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling? When did I ever have the chance, Dad? I asked, my voice soft but firm. Every family gathering, every phone call, every conversation was about how disappointed you were in my life choices. When was I supposed to bring up my business success? I heard my mom crying softly in the background. 3 years ago, when you were facing foreclosure, I tried to discuss helping you, I continued. You told me to focus on my own problems and stop trying to solve everyone else's with my computer games. I remember, my dad whispered, his voice breaking. So, I helped anyway, quietly, I said. I bought your mortgage, let you stay in the house, and made sure your payments went towards securing your retirement instead of enriching some bank. You saved our house, my mom said, her voice trembling with gratitude. I saved your house, Dad, I said. But more than that, I saved your dignity. You never had to know you'd lost it in the first place. The conversation was interrupted by my assistant's voice over the intercom. Miss Sterling, your 10 a.m. is here, the mayor and city council members for the downtown development project. Thank you, Janet, I replied. Tell them I'll be 5 more minutes. Alexandra, my mom said, stunned. Did she just say the mayor? Yes, I said casually. Sterling Tech Solutions is the lead contractor for the new Smart City initiative. We're implementing AI-driven traffic management, digital infrastructure, and public safety systems across the entire metropolitan area. That's a government contract, my dad asked, his voice filled with disbelief. A $250 million government contract, to be precise, I said. We beat out Microsoft and Google for the bid. I heard what sounded like my dad collapsing into a chair. Dad, I need to take this meeting, but we should continue this conversation tonight. Can you and Mom meet me for dinner? Where? My mom asked hesitantly. How about the Metropolitan downtown, top floor? I suggested. That place costs $200 per person, my dad protested instinctively. I'm aware of the prices, Dad, I said with a chuckle. I eat there regularly. Another long silence. Alexandra, my dad said finally, I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. We'll talk tonight. 7 o'clock, we'll be there. After hanging up, I sat back in my leather chair, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office on the 43rd floor of Sterling Tower. Below, the city buzzed with life, much of it powered by software systems my company had developed. My assistant, Janet, knocked gently on the door. The mayor's delegation is ready when you are. Send them in, I said. And Janet, can you have my driver pick up my parents tonight? They're not used to downtown parking. Of course, she replied. The usual car? Actually, use the Tesla Model S, I said with a smile. It's time they saw that I didn't just succeed, I succeeded spectacularly. The meeting with the city officials was a triumph. We discussed the second phase of the Smart City project, which would integrate automated utilities management and predictive maintenance for city infrastructure. By the end, they'd approved an additional $85 million in funding. As the delegation left, Mayor Harrison shook my hand warmly. Alexandra, when we first met 3 years ago, I had no idea your company would transform our city this dramatically. Crime is down 23%, traffic efficiency is up 40%, and our energy costs have decreased by 18%. You've exceeded every projection. Thank you, Mayor Harrison, I said. Phase 2 will show even more dramatic results. Oh, and congratulations on the Forbes recognition, Tech Innovator of the Year. Well deserved, he added with a grin. At 6:30 p.m., I left my office and headed to the parking garage, where my black Tesla Model S was waiting, along with my driver, Marcus. Good evening, Miss Sterling, he said. Should I collect your parents first? Yes, please, I said. They're at 1247 Maple Street, the house in the Sterling Properties portfolio. That's the one, Marcus said with a knowing nod. Tonight, they're going to learn it's yours. The drive to Maple Street took 15 minutes. As we pulled up to the modest 2-story house where I'd grown up, I saw my parents standing on the front porch, dressed in their finest clothes, looking nervous and uncertain. Marcus opened their doors. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. I'm Marcus, Miss Sterling's driver. Driver? My mom whispered to my dad as they climbed into the plush leather seats of the Tesla. Good evening, I said warmly as they settled in. How are you both feeling? Confused, my dad admitted, his eyes scanning the luxurious interior. Alexandra, this car must cost more than I made in a year at the construction company. It's efficient and environmentally friendly, I said with a smile. I try to make responsible choices. My mom ran her hands over the leather seats, her eyes wide. Honey, this is beautiful and so quiet. Electric vehicles tend to be quieter than traditional cars, I explained. As we drove through downtown, my dad stared out the window at the digital billboards and smart traffic lights my company had installed. These new traffic systems, he said slowly, they've made driving downtown so much easier. Sterling Tech Solutions designed and implemented those systems, I said casually. You did that? He asked, stunned. My team did that, I corrected with a smile. We arrived at the Metropolitan, where the valet immediately recognized my car. Good evening, Miss Sterling. Your usual table. Yes, thank you, David, I replied. As we walked through the elegant restaurant, I noticed several business leaders nodding respectfully in my direction. The maitre d' escorted us to my regular corner booth, which offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. Your wine selection is ready, Miss Sterling, he said as we sat down. Thank you, Francois, I replied. My mom looked around, her eyes wide with wonder. Alexandra, everyone here seems to know you. I eat here frequently, I said. It's convenient to my office. Where is your office? My dad asked, curiosity replacing his earlier shock. I pointed out the window to the gleaming skyscraper across the street. Sterling Tower. The entire 43rd floor. My dad followed my gesture, his eyes locking onto the illuminated Sterling Tech Solutions sign on the building's facade. That whole building? My mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I own floors 40 through 45, I said. The rest are leased to other companies. The waiter arrived with a $400 bottle of Bordeaux I'd selected earlier. Miss Sterling, shall I pour? The usual, please, I said. After the wine was poured and our orders were taken, my dad leaned forward, his expression serious. Alexandra, I need to understand something. When did all this happen? When did you become so successful? It didn't happen overnight, Dad, I said. I've been building these companies for 8 years, ever since I graduated from Stanford. Stanford? My mom gasped. We thought you went to State University. I got a full scholarship to Stanford for my master's in computer science and business administration, I explained. You were both so busy with Michael's wedding planning that you never asked where I was going to school. The painful truth hung in the air. My brother, Michael, their golden child, had always been the focus of their attention, while I quietly earned degrees from one of the world's top universities. After graduation, I continued. I started Sterling Tech Solutions in a small rented office with $15,000 in savings. The first year, I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, building our first major software platform, predictive analytics for logistics and supply chain management. It helps companies predict what they need, when they need it, and how to get it most efficiently. Our appetizers arrived, lobster bisque and seared scallops, but we were all too engrossed to eat much. By year 2, I said, we landed our first major client, Henderson Manufacturing. That contract was worth $2.3 million and allowed me to hire 12 employees. Henderson Manufacturing, my dad said, his eyes widening. They were one of my biggest clients at Morrison Construction. They had us build their new warehouse complex. I know, I said. I recommended you for that project. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What? When Henderson asked if I knew any reliable construction companies, I gave them your contact information, I said. That $4.7 million project that saved Morrison Construction from bankruptcy 3 years ago? That was me helping you, even though you had no idea. You got me that contract, my dad said, setting his fork down entirely. I did, I said. And when you started struggling with cash flow 6 months later, I made sure Henderson paid their invoices early. I also arranged for 2 other companies to hire Morrison Construction for smaller projects. Why? My dad asked, his voice barely audible. Because you're my father, I said simply. Because I wanted your business to succeed. Because I hoped that if Morrison Construction was stable, you'd have time to notice what I was building. My mom reached across the table and took my hand, tears streaming down her face. We're horrible parents. You're not horrible parents, I said gently. You just got so focused on what success looked like in your minds that you missed what it actually looked like in reality. Tell us about the house, my dad said, his voice steadying. Tell us exactly what happened. I took a sip of wine, gathering my thoughts. 3 years ago, Morrison Construction defaulted on several major contracts. You'd overextended, taken on projects that were too big, and the cash flow problems were mounting. My dad nodded grimly. The Peterson Plaza disaster. We lost $200,000 on that job alone. The bank was going to foreclose on your house within 30 days, I said. I knew because I have financial monitoring software that tracks family assets. I wanted to make sure you were okay. You were monitoring our finances? My dad asked, surprised. I was protecting our family, I corrected. When I saw the foreclosure notice, I had Sterling Properties purchase the mortgage from the bank for $340,000, plus $67,000 in back payments and fees, a total of $407,000. My dad's face went pale. We had no idea we were that deep in debt. You weren't just deep in debt, I said. You were facing bankruptcy. Morrison Construction owed $89,000 in unpaid supplier bills, $34,000 in equipment loans, and $23,000 in back taxes. How do you know those exact numbers? He asked. Because I paid all of those debts, too, I said. Sterling Financial Services, another one of my companies, purchased all of Morrison Construction's outstanding debts and restructured them into manageable payment plans. The table fell silent. My mom was crying openly now. Alexandra, she whispered, you saved us from bankruptcy, and we never knew. I saved you from bankruptcy, kept you in your home, protected Dad's business reputation, and made sure you could retire with dignity, I said. All while you told anyone who would listen that I was wasting my life playing with computers. My dad buried his face in his hands. We were so wrong. We were so incredibly wrong. Last month, I continued, when you texted me that you were selling the house and putting my stuff on the curb, I realized you still had no idea what I'd done for this family. What exactly have you done? My mom asked, her voice trembling. Beyond the house and the debts, what else? I pulled out my phone and opened the Sterling Foundation app. This foundation has donated $847,000 to local charities over the past 3 years. The Children's Hospital wing that opened last year? We funded the new pediatric surgery equipment. The scholarship program at Jefferson High School? That's us. The new computers at the public library? Also us. You've donated almost $1 million, my dad asked, his voice filled with shock. $847,000 locally, I said. $15.3 million total across all our markets. I showed them the app, scrolling through project after project that Sterling Foundation had funded: community centers, after-school programs, disaster relief initiatives. But why didn't you tell us? My mom asked. Why keep it secret? Because every time I tried to share anything about my work, you changed the subject, I said, pulling up our text message history. Look at this conversation from last Christmas. I texted you about winning a major contract, and you responded by asking when I was going to get a real job and stop playing with computers. My dad stared at the messages, his face crumpling with regret. Or this one from my birthday 6 months ago, I continued. I mentioned that my company was expanding, and you texted back about how Michael had just bought a new truck and suggested I ask him for career advice. We were trying to be helpful, my mom said weakly. You were being dismissive, I said, my voice gentle but firm. There's a difference. Our waiter approached cautiously. Is everything all right? Your meals are getting cold. We're fine, thank you, I said. Could you please wrap these up for us? And bring the check. Of course, Miss Sterling, he replied. As we waited for the check, my dad looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mix of awe and remorse. What happens now? With the house, with everything? That depends on you, I said. The house is yours to live in for as long as you want. The mortgage payments you've been making have been going into a retirement fund that now has $89,000 in it. When you're ready to downsize, you can keep that money. And Morrison Construction is debt-free and has 3 new contracts lined up, all arranged through Sterling Financial Services. Dad, if you want to keep working, you can. If you want to retire, you can do that too. The check arrived $8.47 for dinner. I handed the waiter my Black American Express card without glancing at the total. Alexandra, my mom said as we waited for the car, how can we ever make this up to you? You can start by being proud of what I've accomplished instead of ashamed of it, I said. We are proud, my dad said quickly. We're incredibly proud. We never knew. You never knew because you never asked, I said. And you never asked because you'd already decided that my work wasn't important. The Tesla pulled up and Marcus opened our doors. There's one more thing, I said as we settled into the car. Sterling Tech Solutions just won the contract to design the new smart city system for the entire state. It's a $1.2 billion project over 5 years. My dad stared at me in the dim light of the car's interior. Billion? With a B. With a B, I confirmed. The announcement will be in tomorrow's newspaper. Sterling Tech Solutions is now one of the largest technology contractors in the region. Our daughter, my mom whispered to my dad, owns a billion-dollar company. Multiple companies, actually. Yes, I said, smiling as we drove through the city, my city, running on systems I designed. As we turned onto Maple Street, my dad spoke again, his voice heavy with emotion. I texted you that your stuff would be on the curb. You did, I said. But it's your house. It's always been your house. For 3 years, he said, shaking his head. So, when I said I was putting you out, you were threatening to evict me from my own property. We pulled up to the house, my house, and sat in silence for a moment. The realtor, my dad said suddenly, when I went to list the house, and he said it belonged to Sterling Properties. He was protecting you. Richard Morrison is one of my employees, I said. He's been managing the Sterling Properties portfolio for 2 years. He's my cousin, mom's sister's son. I hired him after he graduated from business school. My mom turned to stare at me. Richard is working for you? Richard, Uncle Tom's daughter, Jessica, and 3 of Dad's nephews, I said. Sterling Companies employs 14 members of our extended family. 14, my dad said, his voice cracking. I believe in taking care of family, I said, even when family doesn't realize they're being taken care of. As my parents got out of the car, my dad turned back to me. Will you come in? Just for a few minutes. I looked at the house where I'd grown up, where I'd spent countless hours being told my interests weren't important, my goals weren't realistic, my achievements weren't worth celebrating. Not tonight, Dad, I said softly. But maybe this weekend. This weekend would be good, my mom said, wiping her eyes. We have a lot to talk about. We do, I agreed. As Marcus drove me back to my downtown penthouse, I reflected on the day's events. For 3 years, I'd watched my parents struggle with the shame of nearly losing their home, never knowing that their daughter had not only saved it, but built an empire in the process. Tomorrow, the newspaper would announce the state contract. By next week, Sterling Tech Solutions would be featured in the business section as one of the fastest-growing companies in the region. My parents would finally understand that their disappointing daughter had been quietly revolutionizing an entire industry. That night, as I settled into my penthouse, my phone buzzed with a text from my dad. "Thank you for saving our home. Thank you for saving our dignity. And thank you for still calling us family after everything we put you through." I smiled and typed back, "That's what family does, Dad. We take care of each other, even when it's not appreciated." A few minutes later, another text came through. "Tomorrow, can we start over? Can we learn about your work and be the parents you deserve?" "I'd like that very much," I replied. As the Tesla pulled into the parking garage of Sterling Tower, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving them wrong while still loving them enough to save them from themselves. And sometimes, the most successful people are the ones who succeed quietly, protecting the people who never believed in them in the first place. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.